I love the Yakuza slash Like a Dragon series, but when I began recommending it to some of my friends, I noticed that they tend to have an incredibly rough start with it, which got me wondering, are the Yakuza games actually any good? So without getting any of my personal biases in the way of my feelings for the series, I think I need to define what good is in a video game. If it's through the lens that it's playable, then yes, the Like a Dragon series is absolutely good, because it does what it sets out to be. Primarily is an open world beat 'em up with a shitload of side content. And while the story does require more than a single layer of suspension of disbelief, it handles honor and conspiracy well enough, even with the stupid decisions our character makes, because, as what Ryuji says, a real man ought to be a little stupid, giving a segue for the soap opera drama the series is known for, as the multiple protagonists in the series aren't afraid to act out on their emotions. So what are the troubles here? Well, without saying it all, ultimately goes down to personal preferences. I think there are a few objective faults that I can find, no matter how far I stretch it. Oh, and spoiler alerts, by the way. So the first section I want to point out is the upgrade system, which is a quintessential aspect of this game, so you can, well, upgrade yourself to get stronger. But there are some, to put it lightly, potholes when choosing an upgrade. Now, I won't say there's any wrong way to play these games, though there are better choices to be made. From observing from what my friend and other streamers does when they first time playing the series, is that they tend to upgrade either body or spirit slash heat first, which, makes sense. The former makes it so you generally do more damage and have more health, while the latter gives you more heat bars, actions, and good passives, which are good upgrades, with the caveat that you're gonna be stuck with the style you have at the beginning. Now, my tip for this is that you should generally focus on upgrading your technique tree first, as it gives you more tools to help you in battle, but even then, it presents itself as a long-term investment instead of an immediate payoff. Let's take Yakuza 0 for example. The first upgrade you can get is the Phoenix Spirit, which boosts your heat at low health. Then you can get either the Brawl Dropkick or Health Boost 1. The latter giving an immediate obvious boost to your health, while the former is a very situational move that you would probably won't ever do. But this is required to get you the re-guard, making guard break stacks way easier to deal with. Not to mention this tree is what you need for the Brawl counterhook, one of the most useful move in the game. While yes, having more health means more survivability, but that's really just prolonging the fight, with a few less tools in your disposal to handle a fight. So besides the main story, these games have a shit ton of content, but it does vary from game to game with how good or bad it's implemented. For example, the Majima Everywhere system from Kiwami 1. Love it or hate it, the system is implemented well enough to the point where you really don't realize that this is technically side content, because it's entirely optional, with sprinkles of stuff that notifies or remind you of this feature being in the game. For a less bad implementation of side content here, is the catfight arena in Yakuza 0. This is, despite being a mandatory visit for the main story, you don't actually need to interact with the minigame to progress the plot, which is, pretty good, so it doesn't obstruct you from the main story. But for a bad implementation, we have Saijima's Hunter and Killer side content, where you are required to play and learn the mechanics for this hunting section here to progress for quite a while. Even though it's pretty well thought out, like you actually do have a lot of stuff to do, from laying traps, hip firing your gun, and a pretty intuitive survival aspect of hunting game, like alerted animals being able to attack you and whatnot. But it's dragged down for being a pretty big non sequitur, which is sad because the first quarter of this game does implement a similar thing pretty well, which is Kiryu's taxi driver side content, where he does a mundane job with a side of illegal street racing. That, makes sense because Kiryu here is established to be disguising himself. And they're also really well thought out, the taxi driving being as tedious as it sounds in real life, as you need to follow actual traffic codes like stopping at a red light, turning with your signals on, and even penalizing you on things like going on a one-way road or hitting a pedestrian. The illegal street racing is also stupid fun with how lenient they can be on the destructive aspects, where you can deliberately make your enemies stuck via head-on collision, and also an obligatory Initial D reference. Also, Haruka's section is pretty good, since they have to be pretty good because they're main content stuff. And her rhythm game is, despite being watered down, just enough for it to be easy for those who doesn't like a rhythm game, but it's not too watered down for it to be too baby easy for those who do like rhythm game. Also, after some times in Haruka, you get rewarded by some Akiyama time, so it balances out. Now for this last point, from what I've seen, the usual recommended title to start the series is Yakuza 0, which, while it is a good starter point, but there's a bit of caveat here. Yakuza 0, Yakuza Kiwami, and Yakuza Kiwami 2 have a pretty distinct modern game feel, especially so once you get to Yakuza 3, of which a poor 60 FPS remaster made a bug in that game where enemies can constantly block your attacks a lot more frequently than usual, making transition from title to title somewhat frustrating. Like for example, Yakuza 1 and Yakuza 2 for the PS2 plays similarly before leaping over to Kenzan in Yakuza 3 that has a completely different game feel, with the former being based around weapon combat and the latter having a pretty bad balancing since it only has like 8 to 10 months of development time if I'm not wrong, and the entire remastered bug where enemies can react to your attacks twice as fast. Now I can't exactly talk about Kiwami 3 since I haven't played it yet, but I can definitely say that Yakuza 3 Remastered is a pretty rough patch in the series, if you don't know what you're doing. Though almost, if not all of the technical oversights did get fixed in Yakuza 4. And finally for the game feel point, the displaced aspect of where and when the games were being made, giving us a total of 4 different game engine logic going up and down when playing the series chronologically, which means you need to adapt to a title a lot more, with some titles being a lot more literal, depending on if it has style switching, additional characters, or a completely different combat entirely. So to circle back, are the Yakuza games actually any good? Well, I'm sorry to disappoint, but I don't have any authority to give a say on this, since I've only played up to like halfway in Like a Dragon 7, because my laptop isn't quite able to run the entries beyond that without some additional black magic, as you can clearly see here. But if you were to ask me that question with that previous context in mind, then yeah, these games are pretty good. It can get frustrating at times, but what games doesn't really? So if you want to get into the Yakuza series, just be prepared for some ups and downs, since the series is incredibly stylized into a specific niche. One that might get repetitive, and maybe a bit bloated at times, but that's ultimately what it sets out to be, as an ultimate simulator, to where you can just do shit because you can, and that's all really. So if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, but if you dislike this video, feel free to give it a thumbs down. Consider subscribing if you feel like you want to see more videos from me, and
Bye.